Dissonance, Passenger, and the Sims Foundation would like to welcome the filmmakers and artists from the Creative High as a part of a special screening for National Recovery Month, which starts today.
Yay.
Woo! We wanted to give some quick information on the organizations that put this screening together, before we got started. Dissonance of Minneapolis, Minnesota is a nonprofit mental health and recovery organization building healthy community in and through the arts. Passenger Recovery is a support system for touring musicians and crew in recovery based in Detroit, Michigan. The Sims Foundation, which is based in Austin, Texas, provides mental health and substance use recovery services and supports for musicians, music industry professionals, and their dependent family members. Through education, community partnerships, and accessible managed care, Sims seeks to destigmatize and reduce mental health and substance use issues while supporting and enhancing the well-being of the music community at large. Please note we will be providing a donation link in the chat throughout the panel. We will also be sending a follow-up email in the coming days, providing further information and donation links on each individual organization. Each of these orgs is a registered 501c3, and thus any direct donation to their websites will be tax deductible. So if you enjoy the panel today, please consider giving back to our music community. We ask that anyone with questions for the panel throughout this presentation, please direct those questions to us in the chat. And thank you for your patience with that. As somebody who is a, creative that's been in recovery for 12 years, I would like to thank the filmmakers for putting this beautiful presentation of recovery together. At the beginning of my journey, there was just this kind of exposure didn't exist, and it's such a stunning look at that. So thank you again for that, and thanks again to everybody for being here. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to our panel moderator, co-founder and chair of Dissonance in Minneapolis, Sarah Sowder Johnson. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, all. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to especially thank our panelists, the filmmakers and artists who are participating, and everyone who is tuning in or watching this recording later on. We really appreciate your support, and having a good community in this effort is key. I think that that's one theme we'll talk about that we see in this theme is no one does this alone very well. So I really love the opportunity to work with other organizations across the country, from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, to spread the message of the Creative High. Something that I see right away in this film is that recovery is not one size fits all, and there are many pathways to well-being in general. So I think that's why it's so appropriate to have this discussion as a panel instead of like a one-on-one interview. You know, we can hear one person's story, we can get one glimpse at what it looks like, but that's really what this movie does too. It brings lots of examples together, and I think some part of it at least would be relevant and relatable to everyone. So I'd like to start by asking each panelist to briefly introduce yourself and tell us why bringing the Creative High to viewers is important to you. Let's start with Patsy.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm Patsy Dolan-Baressa. I'm the executive director of the Sims Foundation in Austin. I think this is important for exactly what you just said, Sarah, the fact that it really shows that all of the people in the film really came to their recovery radically differently. And I think that's such an important message that definitely us at Sims, we've been trying to preach for a long time. It is not a one size fits all. So that was one of the things that I really loved about this film. Thanks for having me.
Great. Who's next? Somebody just jump in.
My name is Wes Gear, founding member of Head PE, former guitar player of Korn, and founder of Rock to Recovery. I think this is, well, first of all, bravo and congratulations, because we all know how hard any giant project is, especially in an artistic endeavor like this. So congrats to everybody involved, and thanks for having me. You know, I think this is really important because I, being an artist, know how many of my fellow artists are just think that being a creative is attached to addiction. It's almost like we give our talents we don't take credit for any of our talents. It's all given to the drug or whatever we're getting high on. It's like, no. And I know for me, when I first looked at recovery, I thought, okay, I got to be sober. So that means the art goes bye-bye. And I know a lot of people feel that way. And so it's important to just start spreading the word that like you are the art, not the drugs, not the booze, not all that kind of stuff. So this is super important to get this message out there.
Thank you, Wes.
I'll jump in. Adriana Marchione. I am the director of the Creative High, and I'm also an arts therapist and a creative person, an interdisciplinary artist myself. And I've been working in the field of art therapy and really teaching and supporting creative people, especially with addictions, for many, many years. And so for me, I'm in recovery myself. I also had the experience of how do I bridge the gap from being a creative person and then finding my way into recovery and not really knowing how to do that. When I got sober 29 years ago now, I didn't have role models. I didn't have people that really guided me to understand how to change that identity as a sober person. So it's really been my mission for many years to support creative people to have these discussions and to help them with tools. But this was another level. I really wanted to do this film because I wanted to reach a broader audience and have these kind of conversations that we're having today. So I'm really so happy to be here and to celebrate National Recovery Month together.
I'll go next. My name's Diane Griffin. I'm the producer of The Creative High and a filmmaker. And I'm very excited for everyone to see this documentary or have seen it. And we still have, I think, one more day. And I always like to start out with a quote. So this is from Kristen Johnson, who's a documentary filmmaker, camera person, and she recently did a film called Dick Johnson is Dead. The arts matter because they help us reimagine our situation, our place in the world. They help us create ourselves. And, reimagining, I'm also in recovery, reimagining ourselves, when we start sobering up. And that's what the arts gets to do too, is to connect us to who we really are, our true selves. And that takes a lot of time and patience. And so anyway, I'm really glad that everyone, to be with everyone here tonight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter, and I'm a performance artist / drag queen / theater writer. It's so good to be here. I just thank Adriana and Diane for asking me to be part of this. Yeah, recovery is a strange thing, and like being an artist in recovery is also challenging. And I think like some of the best work I've done has been in recovery, but it took a while. Like as Wes was saying, it's like I thought that like everything was gone after I got sober. So it's really great to send the message out there that that their life goes on, or a new life goes on. And I just like, I'm so, gosh, like it's just being an artist, and also being an artist in recovery. It's like there aren't very many safe spaces left to express yourself and what you're about. And like, I just thank Adriana and Diana and the team of the Creative High for creating a brave space, because there really isn't any safe spaces anymore. So but they created one for us to like share who we are and what we do. So thank you.
That's a really thorough, beautiful way to sum up why we're doing this tonight. Dissonance wanted to be involved because we are all about building healthy community in the arts and through the arts. So whether or not you yourself are an artist or involved in creating, directly. We have a belief that everybody has creativity, and that can be a real tool in healing and processing and getting to know who you are and how you show up in the world. So thank you for doing this again, just joining with us and having everybody come together for something is special. Especially, it's not a mistake that this is the first day of Recovery Month. That is intentional to recognize. So congratulations to everyone in this space celebrating any level of recovery and whatever that looks like for you. A theme in the Creative High documentary is awareness of self. You hear in each person's story some level of, why was I doing that in the first place? Where was my use coming from? And I heard a lot, and not always these words, but I'm listening, I should say, as a mental health therapist through that, with that lens. And I heard a lot about trauma, and I heard a lot about oppression, racism, a lack of self-esteem, or untreated depression, grief, difficult and maybe unsafe relationships. A lot of that seemed to be sort of the why for some people, at least in the film. And so I wonder if, how is recovery different? Because sometimes using is our treatment. Sometimes using is the way that we are treating the pain or the disease, or the dis-ease, as it were. And so sometimes it's not safe to stop using until you're aware of what that is, and will do something else and come to understand those things. So a question I have in general was, for the filmmakers, how did you approach people kind of knowing that they might already have some of that awareness? How did you select who you were going to interview and include in this, knowing that it would be safe for them? So Adriana, can I start with you on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll see, as you're, I think I really appreciate also when Peter, this term of brave spaces, right? Because for me, what happened is, when I decided to do this and I knew the theme and I knew what I wanted to focus on, with creativity and recovery and to talk to artists, and I started to look for the right folks, or who was willing to do it. And it was, very part of the selection was some people I already knew, some people I made a connection to Peter and also to Luis through a close artist friend of mine. Wes I found through Facebook. Somebody tagged me, Kimiko tagged me and said, hey, you should learn about Wes. So, there was a lot of different ways I connected with the artists. And then going in and starting to talk with them, interview them. I mean, it was really, I just tried to talk like sober person to sober person, artist to artist, and just went in with a lot of curiosity. And I mean, some people I was building a totally new relationship with, and it was a little scary. It was intimidating. I wasn't sure how to do anything but just to be as real and honest as I could be. And I think that my work as a therapist also helped, because I know how to connect with people. I know how to hopefully make people feel somewhat comfortable and safe. So yeah, I'll start that enough.
Yeah, thank you. And Diane, maybe you can answer this question. The movie is divided into 3 chapters. How did you decide to split that up or merge the 3 stories in each section?
Right. Well, I think, part of it is too, is that you learn, there's this intuitive experience that you have too as an artist, and you learn to trust that voice. And I was going to mention that too, as trust is such an important part of being creative, trusting who you are as a creative. And you're holding all these stories, these 9 stories of these artists who are being extremely vulnerable. And we really appreciated that. I'm still touched, when I hear some of the stories that they're willing to tell us that make them, very vulnerable. And I guess I just wanted to bring that up because that's also, a big part of my recovery, trusting myself that I was going to take care of myself.
Mhm.
I had done some self-harm, as an addict. And so just learning that and then bringing that out into the world, not only, to myself, to my work, and to other people and out there. So, yeah. Can you say the other question again?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the chapters and the decision to use 3 chapters and how
Yeah.
who
Okay.
fit where, just a little bit about that decision.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a spontaneous decision, but also that's such an ancient, 3 past, present, and future. That's how
Sure.
we at first had kind of talked about doing colors, like, each chapter even having a color. This is more red, this is more watery. And eventually it evolved to just having those 3 chapters and letting that because of the stories, because we have so many characters, we wanted to have a place to kind of settle before we moved on. And so those chapters allow you to do that. And also those wide shots of the drone shots, we created during the pandemic. I mean, it was really difficult, so I think that we naturally were kind of guided to having a larger landscape guide us too, that we were so cloistered in our homes that there was this larger piece outside of us that was holding us too. So I hope that answers what you were saying.
Yeah, I appreciate the, as a viewer, I liked the ability. In the first time I saw it, I needed to stop between sections, and so that gave a nice resting place, but it also was just enough to make me want to know more about each person. So I liked how you tied it in at the end too, with a little bit about each person's spot as you knew it coming to the end of your production. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Wes, something that that really stood out to me was that you were, and you alluded to this idea that, this is using is making me creative, or using is part of my success, right? It's like, I always have to have more. It lets me stay up. It lets me keep going and going. And then to not be using, what do you do instead? And how do you tap into the freedom, I guess, is because you sound empowered when you talk about your recovery. And you also say there's this beauty waiting for us if we check in, if we connect with other people. So I said a lot just there, but what I'm wondering is how you seem like a very dynamic person, and you're very capable of go. How did you even get yourself to kind of slow down and just check in with you first?
Well, going back to the first part of what you said, and giving the drugs the credit, that was true in some semblance. Like, I had a bunch of crappy bands, and then I got really into meth, and I was leading my band to a record deal for the first time. So it wasn't untrue. And I won't say it's completely untrue either, because it was part of my equation. But that equation wasn't sustainable. So you're asking, how do I get down to the beauty or the art or whatever without the drugs? And at the top of the show, I was thinking, like, art is an expression of spirit. Art is an expression of God. Art is an expression of man. It's an expression of love. Those are all the key ingredients of spirituality and recovery. So it's almost like insane to think that expressing from your heart and love and emoting and creating, which is actual divinity out of the physical self, is not going to be existent when that's what you're doing in your recovery, right? And I've had the benefit of, like, working with wounded warriors, where I'm like, I'm just a dumb tweaker guitar player. Now I'm, helping this guy that was blown up and his friends have been killed and shot. And how can I help him? You realize that dark place is the same for everybody. We can get hung up on what got us there and my story's worse or whatever, but that serves really no purpose. And what was most shocking to me is when the warriors would come up and just say, Thank you so much. I'd be like, dude, I just did some music with you, man. I mean, no, thank you. And it made me realize that like the things that help us are the same. And it's connection, it's love, it's unfettered expression. And so I think like anything, you just got to get used to. I just had to get used to operating in that realm. And then it becomes natural. And then now when I'm creating, I can go to that place that used to feel like some sort of inebriation combo of who knows what. But I can get to that place just sober, like, yeah, oh, wow, this feels good. Yeah. And I'm sober.
You're very connected to you now, it sounds like, instead of needing something else to substitute for that. Peter, you say that your recovery must come first, and I think most people in recovery would echo that. That's a pretty big cornerstone. But I wonder, how has that affected your identity as an artist? Because artists often have to do all sorts of things to live as an artist. Just hustle all the time. And so, if something else has to be your priority, how does that look in your life? And is your creative community supportive of your recovery?
Oh boy. My recovery has to come first.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, it always does. Like, if I don't have my recovery, then I'm not capable of doing everything else. And, for me, like Wes said, it's a spiritual program. It is about like, because I think that like my ego is attached to all those things that you talk about, like being an artist and like having a great job and all these other things that get in the way of a connection with a power greater or connection that I connect with through me. So it's super important that I do that. And it doesn't really like, I don't really, I do have support, but it's like, it's the one thing that I have to choose to do like every day is make a connection with a power greater than myself. So it's really, so people who aren't supportive, I don't really notice them. If that makes any sense. So yeah.
Because your attention is elsewhere.
Yeah, my attention is like, cause like, I don't know. I'm one of those people when I do create, everything that's happening to me at the moment in today gets in there, gets into my art practice, whatever. I'm kind of just like a culmination of like, what's presently going on with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope, did that answer your question?
It did. Yeah. Thank you. I just love that if you ask, that's another thing with this panel is that if anyone's hearing anything and wants to add their own experience, please jump in. And I will say to everyone who is joining us tonight as a viewer and participating in this, you can put a question in the chat if you have anything that you would like to ask the panel, and we'll do our best to get to those questions. Because again, Peter, everybody would have something different to say. Adriana's got your hand up. Go right ahead.
I really just want to chime in and to say about both Peter and Wes, and even part of why we wanted them to be a part of this particular panel is that they both do so much service in recovery. And that is something that has been so I really admire and inspires me. And they also do a lot of service in art recovery communities, sober through Peter through the sober drag community, and and also Wes through the music community, and just really want to acknowledge them because they've done amazing work, and as artists and as recovering folks. So
thank you. Well, community is such a big part of this, and service to others is right up there, right? We don't, whether or not you're moving through a 12-step program or not, that seems to be a pretty key component of all recovery programs. So how are you more available when you are in recovery than when you're using? that might seem obvious, but I'm wondering like if there's a specific way, like, you know, Peter, for you, is it, I can do that now? Or for anybody here who is in recovery, how has that changed in your life? How can you show up for others now?
Well, I think.
Oh, boy.
Okay, go
Like,
ahead.
like that is not my default person. Like the person that I came into recovery is like somebody, and it's really easy to go back there on a daily basis of being somebody who's just trying to get by for themselves. But like what I find is that like when I do have problems that come up in my day, I have to do the opposite of what I think common sense is. Because common sense for me is get everything you can for yourself and do it now. And I have to have uncommon sense. It's like there's a prayer, the St. Francis prayer, that talks about like we do the opposite of what we think we need at the time. So like if we need some comfort, we should turn and comfort others. So sometimes it's not like a straightforward, I do it because I have to. Like I spent so much time and still I'm in untreated alcoholism on a daily basis to where, you know, I've taken a lot and the focus has been on me. So part of my recovery is giving back. I really can't keep anything that I have unless I'm trying to help somebody else. And when I'm feeling bad, helping other people like relieves that. I just forget about myself. So
your sobriety and your in service to others are reciprocal in some ways?
yes.
Yeah.
They kind of go hand to hand. It's like you really can't do one without the other. Just being there without like conscious knowledge of it mattering that you're there when you show up, it's mattering to somebody. The cool thing is that I don't have to take that for myself and go, that's really great, Peter, that you showed up for these people. Try not to think about that as much as just trying to be available.
Great. Chris, you run Passenger, you're a touring musician. You built that program out of your own experience and you know that that's needed for folks who are out on the road. Can you just describe what Passenger does in that way and how that might be part of your own recovery?
Yeah, I love what everyone is saying about identity and having to, to start with that, like I loved what Peter had said about putting recovery first, because I think I kind of had things backwards for a long time. Like I did want my life to get better, but I also wanted a foot in what I thought was the identity of my expression. And I kind of, like at one point in the film, Wes says that things get a little bit lighter and a little bit brighter. And I never saw that because I wasn't really ready to commit and accept and surrender what my identity, what I thought my identity was, which it really wasn't. I mean, as it turned out, once I gave it a real chance, I found that recovery was as much of a connector as I had as with music before I got lost in, the things that originally helped me, obviously were destroying me. And before that, I felt such a connection through music to other people. And recovery ended up giving me that once I could actually surrender who I thought I was. It was so much more of a purer version of that. And my creativity took a turn, but I believe for the better. So Passenger, really quick, what we do in Detroit is just, many years ago, I was in Saskatoon playing a show, and we'd driven all day, and there was nothing open, and I was trying to stay sober. I ended up sitting in a van in the freezing cold because there was no green room, and it was just either cold van or sit at the bar. And I know a lot of venues like that in Detroit that have that there aren't a lot of options. So that's why we started Passenger. It was like, there has to be a better way for this, even for the little people that are playing the dive bars and doing the van tours. So at least people, hopefully, with what we do, can get a reprieve in the Midwest, where there's a little bit, drives are longer and there's a little bit less of a support connection.
Thank you. Patsy, what does it look like for you, or what would you like to add?
Well, just, one of the things that we talk about working predominantly again at Sims with people in the music industry, music, especially live music, brings everybody together, and there is that sort of sense of community, right? You're on stage and your crew and you're together in this thing, and then you're out there with the people who love your music and are sharing that with you. But when that's over, that community is gone now, and you're left with yourself. And so one of the things about recovery or about being lost in your addiction is that you truly have a loss of connection to other people. Even though you probably have people that you use with or you hang with when you're using, they're not really knowing the real you, and they're not really connecting with you. You guys are just kind of all off getting high on your, and in the same room together. So it's not really a connection. And so the thing that we hear time and again is from our clients is when they get into their recovery, whatever that recovery looks like, and then find true connection with other human beings through giving back, through service to others, through just becoming a real person with the individuals who are actually in your life waiting for you to be okay and hoping that you'll be okay. So once that happens, it's just this beautiful thing to see that this human is being born again, essentially, and making connections with other human beings that they haven't had in some cases in decades because they've just been so lost. And then with the creativity, we hear, Wes, when you were talking about, thinking that your creativity came from the drugs and alcohol use, I hear that all the time, every day. And then 100% of the time, that's not an exaggeration, when somebody gets solid in their recovery and comes back to Sims to thank us or to celebrate with us or tell us that they hit a milestone, 100% have said their creativity is way better than they ever thought it could have been. And then they look back at some of the things that they thought were really amazing that they created when they were using, and they're realizing that some of those really weren't their best works. So, I love that, especially that you all who are in recovery and who are creative are talking about being reconnected with that creativity and realizing that it's been there all along. It's just been waiting for you to find yourself again. So I think all of that, everything you guys are saying is just so exciting to me, because I'm just hearing our clients' stories over and over and over again. So it's so important to have you out here and in the film, just talking about that and reaching so many more people. It's just so important and very moving.
Thank you. Something else that comes up in the film is this idea of when you aren't using, you are forced to reckon with your thoughts, and you can do what we call in therapy, put your thoughts on trial a bit and see that maybe your head is lying to you and that your thoughts aren't all facts. Your thoughts aren't facts, right? And so are drugs and alcohol making that worse, making those lies, making that story about you, whether it's about, oh my God, I'm so amazing because, and I'm only good when I'm high, or no one will like me if I'm not drunk, or whatever it might be, whatever the thoughts are. The sobriety makes those thoughts a lot louder. And so then you have to deal with those. And so then, that leads to a whole slew of emotions. How do you, if you're having an increased range of emotions when you're not numbing them out anymore, and you can hear your thoughts more clearly and understand them, then what do you do? So I guess I'm wondering for the folks in recovery, what has it been like to grapple with those things? The truth of what you tell yourself, or what you've been listening to, how you've been making your decisions, and just your feelings, instead of numbing them out.
I'll just
Diane,
chime in.
or Adriana, go ahead. Yep.
I'll just chime in real quick with that
Yeah.
one. There was a specific moment in the film with Ralph Spite, one of the musicians, where he says,
Yeah.
He talks about it never being good enough. The song's not good enough. My house isn't good. My relationship isn't good enough. And that to me was such an important clip to put in, because I feel like it is such a big theme, like you're saying. And I know it's been so true for me that my inner critic, it just I have to contend with it on a regular basis. It's all the time kind of running alongside me is what I say. When I work with people and I coach people around their creativity, I'm always like, it's gonna run beside you, but don't, but it's not, don't let it be in the driver's seat. And that's what I've been having to keep kind of working on in myself and finding things to do to get support or find things to do to combat those voices, because yeah, it's not facts, but it certainly is, to me, a part of my alcoholism. Is I think everybody has an inner critic, but I think it can be more amplified sometimes if you deal with mental health issues and addiction issues.
Absolutely. And so even if it's not rational or true, it's still real. You're still possibly, you've built maybe your belief system about yourself around those things. So that's very important to know it and to say, hey there, you thing, this part of me running alongside me. I'm not going to numb you out anymore. I'm going to recognize you, and you don't get to just take over when I'm, not really able to be behind the wheel, so to speak. Diane, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I also work a meditation and recovery program, and learning to sit with myself was totally opposite of what I did as an addict, being able to sit and not move and not do anything and just look at what flies through my mind, and learning how not to attach to it. And it's an ongoing process, because I want to attach to it. I don't want to sit here. I remember too, when I first got into the rooms, I would leave, all the time and come back in, leave, come back. And, old timers would say, sit down, would you sit down? I mean, I can laugh at it now, but it really helped me. It really helped me just to be quiet. And it also helped my creative process, because I learned how, I could see things that were coming through also clearer, because I was there ready to hear it. And that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen more for me, being able to sit with it all. And sometimes, sometimes some days are better than others.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. This is not a linear process.
Yeah. You have
Peter.
a few coffees and it will affect you.
Peter, what do you want to say?
Well, I just want to say that, like, before recovery and in my recovery, my head tries to run the show. It just does. And like what Diane was talking about, it's like I'm just trying to drop it down 6 inches from my head to my heart. And I feel like all the ideas, like I'm constantly having to like go back and like check my ideas. Are they ones that I need to get rid of? Was I ever in control of my thinking? No. I came to the program for a drinking problem, and I stayed because I have a thinking problem, and that was going on long before, and continues to get at me. And it's like I have to just sit with myself and try to feel the feeling, try to hear the inner voice instead of like what this tells me. Because if I refer to this to solve a problem, it usually ends up really bad. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Wes, I see your hand up.
That's my virtual hand. Yeah. I guess I got to lower my hand now. Recovery, right? This word, it's, we're getting something back. We're getting our true selves back. So I like to speak a little bit to like, it's not always that way. How the bondage of self was for me when I came into recovery, shame, guilt, insecurity, walking in a room. Oh, everybody's looking at me. No, they're not, dude. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? Oh, I said something funny. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. And nobody even's thinking about, all these things. It's the bondage of self. But the more I recover my true essence by getting down to causes and conditions, right? That's the thing. It's called, what I was taught, it's restless, irritable, and discontent. And what I talk about sometimes is when, if you ask people new to recovery, hey, how is it sitting on the couch by yourself? Oh my God, it's horrible. Now, give me a couch and some free time. That's where I want to be, by myself. I love it because I'm not the same person that came in here. So what did it take? It took getting down to causes and conditions, addressing my traumas, addressing my resentments, my angers, my fears, and clearing this out. And so to me, it's all energy work, right? When I come in, I'm like a car crash victim. All I can think about is the, broken, smashed cars in my life. And in time, that stuff goes away and it gets better. But, going back to the theme here of creativity, when I'm creating from a realm that's like, oh, that guitar chord's stupid. Oh, you always do that. Oh, that's lame. And then I do some drugs. It's like, hey, that sounds so good. It's a synthetic high. When you learn to make peace with those voices like we're talking about and just kind of let them simmer down, that's when our true self can come out. And I think it's really getting ourselves to our natural state. I don't like to put out to the universe that like I am the same as when I start. I'm 14, go around the corner to 15 years sober. I'm not as stuck up here as I used to be. And the same with creativity, right? At first, creating newly sober was hard. In time, it just becomes natural.
Beautiful. Thank you. What wonderful contributions from each person with just, everybody's got their slight different experience and point of view. Peter, you said, if I get out of here and I drop down into my heart, that really resonates with me as an overthinker. That's big time. So, I have a question to share from the audience that I think is really an important thing to address. And it says, I'm hearing many references to divinity and otherness as part of recovery. Could anyone speak to guidance for atheists in recovery?
I can tackle that, but anyone else?
Let's start with you, Adriana.
I wouldn't call myself an atheist, but I know a lot of them. And I think it's important to think about many, many pathways in recovery, right? And that there's many pathways that people go. Some people have a spiritual pathway. Some people might, it's more of an emotional recovery. Some people do all sorts of different programs. For me, as a creative person, I really believe that creativity and art is part of it's my life force. It's the creative practice. I could call it a spiritual practice sometimes, but in general, I think about it as it gives me an aliveness that I needed. Uh-oh, looks like we have a bomber.
I think Wyatt will take care of that for us.
It gives me an aliveness that to me is really important and powerful. And I think everyone is creative. I think we all have creativity in us. And so I would say, yes, if you if you're an atheist or are not a spiritual, have that orientation, there's so many ways to think about the creative life and the creative force.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to know that we are not endorsing any one method or path to recovery or sobriety or connection for that matter through this program. And again, that's part of why we have a panel. It's so important to see the variety of ways to being well. Patsy, what would you like to add to that?
Just want to build on what Adriana was talking about. We have so many clients, both at SIMS and then in my social work career, that I've worked with people either who have been in recovery and have had a reoccurrence of use or starting their own path to recovery, who hear those words like God or higher power or spiritual. And immediately sort of get their blinders on. And one of the things I've talked to people about for decades now is, your recovery is yours. And so here in Austin, in the middle of downtown, we have Town Lake where people run and there are geese and ducks and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, if your quiet recovery space is to go stare at the ducks every morning on Town Lake, then that's your recovery. And that speaks to what you were saying, Adriana. If that gets you connected to that sort of creationist sort of realm of just looking at what's around you and finding that peace. And then others, find it through working out. Others really focus on, helping others. And those are their sort of spiritual path. That's where they find their awakening. And addition to that, it's just to really make sure that everybody who's listening really understands that, as we're saying, there isn't one pathway to recovery. There's all these things that are depicted in popular movies and television, right, about what recovery looks like. You go into a treatment facility, you're there for 30 days, you leave, you do 90 and 90. And if you don't do that, then you're not doing it right. And there's so many other options. There are so many people who have never gone to treatment that worked for them. It doesn't work for others. And I just want anyone listening to this panel to know that there's so much more out there than what you might see in the general populace, and to just ask questions. We talk to management of people who are maybe on tour who have stumbled and the management wants to fire them in the middle of, Spain or whatever. And I'm like, whoa, this is fine. Like what's happening right now as part of this person's recovery, they can get back on path. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater for a minute. And having discussions with loved ones and those management teams about, this person is not choosing rehab, but that's a perfectly appropriate decision for this person. Here's what they're opting for instead. So I want everybody to walk away knowing that there's so many options to support you. You don't have to have belief in any kind of higher power if that's not what resonates with you. And you don't have to follow a path that you've seen or read about in magazines, because it's different for everybody. And there's lots of beautiful ways to find your own space in that recovery world.
Any other thoughts on that idea? The different pathways? So in our pursuit of having this conversation tonight, you are all willing participants. We're talking about addiction and recovery. How do you, in your other parts of your life, when you're not on a panel or being featured in a documentary or working in the field, how do you get the conversation going when it comes to these topics? When you notice somebody in my life might need help, or I have concerns, or I recognize this in another person, what is a way to broach the topic? I know that that's a very common question, and one that I've received before the panel started.
I can start, Sarah.
Yeah.
Just being straightforward is one of the best things. I think we all get concerned about. You don't want to offend that loved one. You don't want to get it wrong and then hurt their feelings because maybe they're just having a bad day and drank too much, and now you're asking these questions. But I think coming at it from the space of your heart, I have a question to ask you because I care about you. There's no judgment whatsoever. I'm just concerned because I'm noticing a pattern or whatever. Do you want to talk about this? Is there anything I can do? That's sort of just opening up the door, and at a minimum, letting them know that it's safe for them to come and talk to you. They may not want to do it in that moment, but now they know that you are a judgment-free zone and you're there when they're ready, should there really be an issue. I think just opening that door in a gentle, loving way is so important, because we often hide. And then when sort of the wheels come off and people are really in crisis, then the person who wanted to reach out is like, oh, maybe if I had done something, then this wouldn't have happened. So it kind of causes a lot of trauma and pain along the way with everybody involved. If you don't just say, I just love you, or I care about you and I'm worried, that's all. I just want you to know that I'm here, and there won't be any judgment if there is something going on. So just like nudging that door open a little and letting people know it's safe.
Yeah, and letting it stay open. It's not closing behind me when we're done with this conversation.
I
Yeah.
think also for me as a person in recovery, how I'm choosing to live my life today as a person in recovery is making a huge statement. I mean, I'm going against generations of addicts, alcoholics in my family. And for me in the past, I, was hoping that maybe some of my family members would come in and tried to persuade them. And it just didn't happen like that, and nobody came up in my family and said, God, I just love the way you're living your life. Can help me? Nobody did. And that's okay. Because again, how I am choosing to live my life, it's a revolutionary in my case. And I keep showing up. I go to meetings and I have sponsees, and those sponsees come up to me, and I'm ready to be of service because so many people have done that for me. And some people couldn't be my sponsor. And you know what? That's not going to stop me, because it's so important to me to live this life that I only dreamed of, really. I didn't think I could make it as many years as I had. So I'm very grateful that I have people who I don't know who are showing up every day for me. It's meant a lot.
Well, and thank you for showing up for them and for all of us here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Patsy.
Just wanted first, again, thank you, Diane. That you made me giggle about the family thing, because that resonated with me. But I just wanted to say to everybody on this panel and everyone who was in the film, like, just living your lives and being willing to be this public about your own experiences. Every single time you do that, you're absolutely touching millions of people who are considering or maybe thinking about it. And to be able to see people who maybe are living the life that they are also living or would aspire to live and express in their creativity, it's just invaluable to have people like you who are willing to be so vulnerable and open about your pathways.
I just want to say something, though, to Adriana's benefit. When I first started working on the documentary, I was like, I do not want anyone to know I'm in recovery. Is that okay? Are you clear about that? And she's like, well, why not? And I'm like, that's just the way I want it. And I hope you're going to honor me with that. And things kind of changed.
I really love to know that. Thank you for sharing that. Really neat.
Oh, yeah. Adriana did it.
And also we have, one of our associate producers that's here actually today, two of them, Stefano Hillman's here, and as well as Shelley Rickenbach. And I want to also just credit Shelley for really supporting us to think about the bigger picture of recovery and Recovery Month and all this. She really championed a larger view. So,
yeah, I think stepping out of shame is a huge part of recovery. And realizing that you're not bad. This is a part of you that is no longer serving you, and maybe it did once upon a time, and that you've decided to do something else and really truly know yourself and live fully in that way. And some people won't like that. Some people will have a very difficult time with that or not be able to hang with that. And so then we go back to finding the idea of the healthy community and who can be there in your life and who deserves a place. Because you know that you are now worthy. You now understand that and can live fully in that. So, gosh, I would like to keep talking with all of you, and I'm also really highly aware of the time, our hour together coming to the end. I want to give Wes a chance to add. It looks like you have something else, and I do have a final question for everybody as well. Go ahead, Wes.
I'll try to be brief. Thanks. As far as helping other people, I just like to tell them that the road I've been down and how dark and crazy it got, and that I couldn't do it on my own and I needed help. Because most people, when they're struggling, are like, I got this. Like, okay, cool. You got it. Right on. But if you ever don't got it, I couldn't get it on my own. I'm here to help you. And that's what it takes. So, it's like one alcoholic helping another or one tweaker helping another. I just let them know that we just might be a lot more alike than they care to admit at the time.
Yeah, being able to say, hey, me too, that's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, I said, you stepped out of the shame thing into your empowerment of it's not, I'm no longer afraid to say that about myself or to admit these parts. And especially if it might help somebody else, that can be a big part of it. Like, oh, I'm willing to say it if it might help. And that's really, really neat. I love hearing that story from you, Diane, especially. Thank you.
Yeah, I also think of living amends, you know, how we're choosing to live our lives as a living amends.
Yeah. Great. Well, I have a question for everybody in service of the creative high. I'm wondering if we can each leave one small realistic step you recommend that folks watching take today or this evening to connect to creativity in their own lives. And knowing that for all of us, creativity is part of our wellness. So any ideas? One small, really realistic, really something really bite-sized, but something somebody could go out and try today.
I'll start because I am somebody who plays that negative tape about myself, like you can't do this and you can't do that. And one is that I'm not creative. So I will say that often. And I really appreciated what all of you all who live your life with creativity, and that's what you do every day, to remember that everybody does have creativity in some way, and to be open to whatever that might be. Don't try to squash it because you can't be as creative as blank.
Great. Good reminder.
I like what John Dido Laurie says. He says, creativity is our birthright. It's as basic as walking, talking, and thinking. Yeah.
So it's part of getting back in touch with who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, you know, just it sounds impossible. Just have fun. Just have fun. Who gives a I want to F-bomb so hard right now. And for me, what helps is finding other artists that just make my heart swell because I love their stuff so much. I find a song or a painting and I'm just like, oh my God, it's amazing. And I go from there. That works really well for me.
Awesome.
Well, none of this would be possible if I didn't give up. So for me, it's like I just kind of have to surrender to a process, whatever that is. Just let it take me where it's going to take me. I don't try to fight it. That's it.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I have so many artist friends who are like, I'm just not inspired. And I hate that. The songs I've written that have been on the radio, I wrote after sitting at the studio for 8 hours, not being inspired. And there's a saying I heard recently is inspiration finds you working. Just keep going.
So I want to say, before I say anything, I just want to say that these organizations here, Passenger, Sims, and Dissonance, this whole event is really to support National Recovery Month, but also to champion them. So if you haven't already, please consider making a donation. So the link is in the chat. So I just really want to say that that's one way you can support the arts, is to support them, and that also supports people in recovery. Part of it for me is taking the time to listen. Just if I listen and stop and get out of this just ordinary, like, got to do this, got to do the laundry, got to do the, dishes, got to do the next thing. Art to me is a place where I feel something extraordinary. It's where I get to, again, be a little bit altered in a really positive way. Back to the creative high. So taking the time to do something more soulful with yourself. And sometimes that can just be taking a walk. It can be listening to music. It can be just finding a little dance, but just pausing and getting into something more sacred or altered or extraordinary, whatever word works for you.
Chris, do you have a hot tip for us?
It was just this whole talk to me is, for me, well, how it's translated is balance, shoot for balance. And the reason I say that is I was talking with a friend recently, and he said about his journey, you know, I'm nothing, but I'm all I think about. And that kind of wraps it up for me. It's like self-loathing and self-obsession. I can't just be in the middle. I have to either whip myself or love myself beyond any reasonable measure. And so to be in the middle is the thing I have the hard time with, but peace is in the middle. And so to
Long
find
live
that
King
balance.
Baby. I love it.
That's right, King Baby. So yeah, daily balance.
Daily balance. Great. And something that I think I would like to recommend is something silly. Do something silly tonight that might even just be sticking your tongue out at somebody and see what happens. Something out of the ordinary for you. It gets your brain off of the path of I must do or, you know, become or something all the time, and just be silly. Have a little bit of fun to release some of our energy and put good out there too. Wow, this has been wonderful to spend the hour with you all, and thanks to everyone who joined us. Really appreciate you.